Welcome back to the Huddle. As always, I'm your host, Maya Perez, and today we got some sports to talk about. Of course, we have to start things off on the ice with the firing of head coach Bruce Cassidy for the Vegas Golden Knights. And I loved Bruce Cassidy, but Kelly McCrimmon, GM of VGK, said that the spark was just gone in his press conference Monday morning. The Knights hired hockey legend John Tortorella, and obviously it paid off with a win against the Canucks Monday night. But that's enough from me. Let's skate on over to Kyle and Justin, who have more on NHL.
Thank you, Maya. Sunday was a very interesting day in the NHL as we saw Bruce Cassidy got let go from the Knights. I mean, what an interesting call by the Knights organization.
You never see a coach fired this late into the season unless your team is just like the worst team in the NHL. But this is a team that they're third in the Pacific right now. They're in a playoff position, and they fired their Stanley Cup winning coach, Bruce Cassidy, for John Tortorella, who was fired from the Flyers, the Philadelphia Flyers. And it's one of the rarest things. I've never seen a situation like this ever watching the NHL.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to your point, like they're still in a playoff spot. Normally you'd see like coaches let go kind of towards the beginning of a season or like maximum the middle of the season, but they decided to let him go with about 8 games left in the season. And you got to question it, especially you hire John Tortorella as well, who kind of, yes, he's a legendary coach. I get that. But at the same time, like you look at his overall record, he's almost 500. Like he is not like the winningest coach like ever. And you just kind of question the move because, again, late in the season, they're in the playoff spot. I will say their team was like heading in the downwards direction, maybe just like a little bit of new blood trying to spark something. That could be the only reason why I think that, but I just really questioned it at that moment.
You mentioned his winning percentage. Overall in his career, it's lower than Cassidy's. And Tortorella, yeah, he's legendary from the early 2000s. I mean, let's be real here. He's a little bit past his prime. There's a reason Philly didn't want him anymore. And this move, for me personally, it reeks of desperation, you know, because you need that. They were on a losing streak. I get that, but this is not, it's like that Denzel Valentine clip. This was not the shot for that situation, man. You just don't fire your coach right before a playoff push.
And we've never seen it either. Like, you know, you take a look at the Knights franchise as a whole. Like, obviously they had that cup run. They won a Stanley Cup against the Florida Panthers with Bruce Cassidy, who brought their first Stanley Cup in Vegas history. And you just you just look at it. I could tell you one thing from when the news broke, like I can't remember what it was. I think I saw, someone texted it to me, and I was like, no way that's real, right? So I checked Instagram, and every single post hockey related was Vegas firing Bruce Cassidy. And then the other thing, hiring John Tortorella that quick. I mean, I would expect kind of an assistant coach to be promoted or something. But you kind of look at how quickly they hired John Tortorella, and you're like, okay, so this has been kind of happening or kind of in the works for a minute, because you don't hire a coach that fast.
Literally exactly as you said. This was brewing for a while. You got to wonder what was going on in the upper management for the Golden Knights. And I don't want to lay into them a little too hard. They are our hometown team, but they've kind of maybe not been the most ethical organization. You know, if you remember the Mark Stone long-term injury reserve cap circumvention during their Stanley Cup year. You also think about maybe the Carter Hart signing, which as a player, it made sense for the team, but at the same time, there was like a lot of baggage to carry over with that. So with this move as well, it just makes me like question and like really, the upper management of the Golden Knights is fascinating. It's a fascinating thing to study.
And we won't really get to see whether or not if it plays out, because John Tortorella has about 7 or 8 games to kind of get his team in a spot where, okay, because if the Kings were a little bit better, they'd be in jeopardy of a playoff spot. And I think it's like 6 points they're separated by right now with maybe 7 games remaining. And you look at that division as well. It's not the best division. And, you know, you also have Edmonton, who, you know, we all know about Edmonton. And I think just the hiring of John Tortorella, you gave him such little time with not that much pieces, because their goaltending has been the main struggle of their season, I would say. Like when Adin Hill doesn't perform, they don't really have the depth at that point. But I say if they do get into the playoffs and they do kind of make a run, then you'll start to see, I guess, John Tortorella's kind of quote-unquote expertise, because we know he's been in a lot of those playoff scenarios with other teams, and because he's historically a good coach. I wouldn't say he's a great coach. I wouldn't say he's a horrible coach, but I just think that kind of he brings that new blood, that new experience, and we all know John Tortorella. If you look up John Tortorella iconic moments, you could make a 30-minute YouTube video on that very same exact thing. And he means business.
He means business, but also, is that the business that you really want? As we've seen over the past few years with Philadelphia, they've gone nowhere. They've been mid. They haven't been really bad, but they haven't really made the playoffs either. And that's kind of been the story, kind of the Golden Knights this season. Yes, they're in a playoff position, but in the entire 32 teams, they're 19th in points. So it's not like they're world beaters or anything like that. It's just, you hire a coach who's kind of over the last 10 or so years been mid for a team that is currently mid to be better. And you fire a coach who just recently won you a Stanley Cup. And yeah, I'm sure this is not the season that Vegas wanted, especially after splurging, get Mitch Marner, get Carter Hart, but he's injured right now. And this is a lot of things going very wrong for Vegas right now. I think this is kind of slapping a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. It's just not the right decision.
Yeah, and you go back to your point about desperation. I think that's the perfect way to put it. I think when you're looking at a team that is in a playoff spot, as I mentioned before, you kind of starting to see them slide down the spiral and go into a spiral. I think they brought him in to kind of just neutralize it and try and just get back in the winning ways. But enough about that. In terms of playoffs in general, we have a lot to talk about, as you've only seen two teams clinch the playoffs. You have the Dallas Stars and the Colorado Avalanche. Minnesota could clinch it today, and I think also my Buffalo Sabres can clinch it with a win against the Ottawa Senators. But I mean, dare I say this is the closest that it's been in a minute for the playoff race in both conferences?
Dare you say you'd be correct, because I'm sure you're ecstatic about the Sabres, the opportunity to clinch this playoff spot, which you have not even seen. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Pacific. Even like the Pacific is a great example of that. A bunch of teams were kind of sub 90 points right now, but they're battling it out. Any like 3-game losing streak or a 3-game point streak could really turn the tide of that division. This is definitely sort of the most parity I've seen in the NHL in a fair bit.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with you. I think that the Pacific, as you said, I think that's one of the tightest, if not the tightest division in the NHL right now. And, you know, you take a look at those teams, you take a look at like Anaheim, you take a look at like teams like San Jose as well. There's about a 5-team race for that final wild card spot, and even potentially into the top 3, because we don't know what could happen with the Vegas Golden Knights. But then you look at the Eastern Conference, and I think this is where it kind of gets even, dare I say, tighter, because you have the Atlantic Division between the Sabres, the Lightning, and the Canadiens. As you said, any losing streak of any kind can result in the loss of a division, pretty much. Then you also look at kind of the Metro as well. Hurricanes, I think, got in the bag, but you look at like the Islanders, the Penguins. Every one of those teams could make the playoffs. And it's, again, like, yes, they have more points than like the Pacific Division and the Western Conference, but it is so close in both conferences, especially in the East, that you can't even tell who's going to make it.
Yeah, and the one thing I love about hockey maybe the most is that even if you're an 8 seed or a 1 seed, you have just as good a chance to win any series, because that's the way with hockey, the balance of the puck, you know. But I'm very bullish on the Penguins. I really think Crosby and the gang can get it done this time. I know they've kind of, ever since that 16-17 back-to-back Stanley Cups, they haven't really done much. A few playoff trips here and there, but a little disappointing. And also, I really am interested kind of with Tortorella's old team, the Flyers, because they're, once again, because he started the season, they're in a place where they can either try their best and win it and make a playoff spot, or do they just tank, maybe try to get a lottery for Gavin McKenna? It's really interesting. The 2 teams from Pennsylvania, in my opinion, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, another team that I think is kind of, they did lose a big one yesterday, but it's the Ottawa Senators. And, you know, you take a look at, again, that Atlantic Division, and you have like kind of the 3, and then you have both Boston and Ottawa. And I think if Ottawa wants to have a good chance, they did lose, like, there was 5 goals scored against them in the first period. And, you know, you take a look at their goaltending. Allmark hasn't been the same since he left Boston. And I think that the Senators, like, we've always considered them like kind of a bottom tier playoff team, and every single time they kind of squeak into that wild card position. And, you know, I think that it's similar with the New York Islanders. Yes, they're in the top 3 right now, but you take a look at their team and you take a look at, Anders Lee, you take a look at Matthew Schaefer, who's having an incredible season, and you take a look at those 2 teams. You take a look at kind of Ottawa does have Brady Tkachuk, they have Tim Stützle, but I just think the New York Islanders, yes, I know they're in separate conferences, but come playoff time, if you get into that kind of hairy spot with both of those teams potentially meeting, then you have pretty much a toss-up series. And I don't know who's going to match up with who. All I know is that playoffs start this month, and it's going to be crazy. Yeah, and I think we're going to see a pattern that we've seen in the past however many years. I don't think a Canadian team has a shot to win it all this season. As you mentioned, Ottawa, I can't be high on Edmonton. We see it every year. They blow it in heartbreaking fashion, the McDavid curse. But I also really like the Detroit Red Wings. I think because they have that one line where you have Kane, you have DeBrincat, you have Larkin. That's all. I think in like an overtime sense, in a playoff game, Game 7, that's who you want out on the ice. So I'm very... Yeah, Detroit, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, that's who I'm looking at. Detroit's got to make the playoffs first. That is true, but once again, I think they have to go on that run. I just feel it. I feel like they're the team of destiny this year. If you had to give a pick across both conferences, like because I know the top 3 is kind of already decided in some of the divisions, who would you say from a team that's kind of out of a playoff spot that could be in a playoff spot for both the West and the East? Who would you say? I think, as you said, the Kings earlier, I think that would definitely be my pick for the West, just because, Panarin, they still have some of the old guys, they're still around. And also on the East, yeah, Detroit, really, because they have the high-end top talent that can get you far. I know they haven't, and there's still some of the young guys like Mo Seider, but I think those are the 2 teams that, even though if they're not technically in a playoff position right now, I just have a feeling about them. Go on a hot streak, make it to the playoffs. I'm going to agree with you on the West side. I think I'm going to say the Kings. I would love to see the Sharks in the playoffs. I think Macklin Celebrini, to cap off this insane season he's had, I think that would be phenomenal. But I think in the East, I think it's going to be Detroit. And I think that we kind of saw it last season as well. Like all the games that they had kind of played, and you saw the insane finishes as well. Then they kind of got screwed out by the Islanders and the Capitals. But I just think, when you take a look at how tight this race is, even one loss can just change the entire thing. Maybe not so much in the West, but for the East, I can almost guarantee if you see the Senators win and you see even Columbus as well. You see Columbus lose, you see Flyers lose, you see any of those teams lose. And if you're the Senators and one of those bottom tier teams, 5-6 points out, you're there's our chance. Yeah. I don't even know how many real teams have been technically eliminated from the playoffs, but it hasn't been very many. I think it's just the Canucks. Yeah, that's not really surprising, but once you put it in perspective like that, it really shows how bad of a season they've had. And I kind of relating back to sort of the Tortorella thing, for his first game as a Golden Knights coach to be against the Canucks, that's kind of served on a silver platter. That makes sense. I think that because we talk about how it was kind of ready to go, that they were ready with Tortorella as soon as Cassidy got fired. I think they had to plan that his first game would be against the Canucks, to instill some morale back into that Vegas locker room. I think you're right, and kind of it's a softball game as well because they're practically an AHL team. Let's be completely and totally honest. I think they're not even at 50 points yet. I don't even think so. And as soon as they lost Quinn Hughes, I think that was kind of the nail in the coffin, be okay, we're starting a rebuild. And but at the same time, I think it was good for John Tortorella because he got to know the system, he got to know the people, and we know John Tortorella. As I mentioned before, iconic moments, he means business, whatever. But I think if you look at that team, you look at that locker room that we can tell was going downhill probably months before the actual Bruce Cassidy firing, I think it was kind of a good game for him to be okay, here's what I got, here's what I don't got, and kind of build into the future. Yeah, keep screaming at the refs because that's kind of his main thing. But if you're a Canucks fan, you have to be rooting for the Wild to win it all, right? Your boy Quinn Hughes, almost every Canucks fan have to have his jersey at this point. And for him to be traded away like that now with the Wild, though, and they're succeeding, I think they got to be rooting for them in the Stanley Cup. Only time will tell as we approach that final push, if you will. That playoff push. Yep. But that's all from us on the hockey edition of the Huddle. Maya, we'll send things back over to you.
Thank you, guys. Honestly, I'm so excited for the NHL playoffs and how Vegas performs. Heading on over to the court, though, I don't know if you guys saw, but Wemby said he's the best defensive player in the league, which is a hot take. But hey, if you're confident, you're confident. Let's take a quick look.
What are your 3 campaign speeches?
Three arguments. My first one would be that defense is 50% of the game and that it is undervalued so far in the MVP race because I believe I'm the most impactful player defensively in the league. Second argument would be that we almost swept OKC in the season and we dominated them 3 times with their real team and 4 times with more rotation players. And my third argument would be that offense impact is not just points.
I mean, the Spurs currently stand second in the West, so maybe he's right. Let's send it on over to our basketball experts to tell you more. Guys, do you agree with Wemby?
Thanks, Maya. For me, I do agree with Wemby because he's the best offensive player for his team and he's the best defensive player for this team. He's the best basketball player in the world. And does that equate to value? I think that's what we're here to argue.
Victor Wembanyama's argument for MVP was a great one. I gotta commend the kid for, getting up in the press conference and stating his case for MVP. But I do not think that his argument was legit because MVP. Well, if Victor won the MVP this year, he would be knocking off Derrick Rose as the youngest MVP, and we just cannot let that happen. For one, and for two, his argument being defense is 50% of the game. That's legit. I respect that. So that's a legit argument. He's an otherworldly defender. Averaging 3 blocks a game, he's definitely a hard guy to
steal. A whole steal.
And a steal again. He's definitely a hard guy to score on. So that's legit as well. Him also stating that his most legit argument, stating that they knocked off the defending champs and the reigning MVP 3 out of the 4 times that they played this year. Now that is probably his most legit argument. But him stating that offense is not just points is kind of ridiculous.
Absolutely.
If offense, I understand offense is more than points, but you want to know how you beat a basketball team? You score more points than the other team. Luka and Shea are 1 and 2 for MVP, and I got to give Victor Wembanyama the third in the race. He cannot get MVP this year. He's just too young.
Absolutely. I agree with what Chris was saying. When I saw the MVP rankings drop last week and I saw Luka Doncic average basically 35-point triple-double and a 10-1 record over the last 11 games, and I saw him drop to 4th, I looked at that and I was like, what are we seeing? And I want to go back to that part of defense you say. Luka Doncic has taken a step defensively this season. You cannot say that he's a bad defender this season. You can't use that in an argument against him for MVP, in my opinion. Yes, you can use it as a way to amplify what Wemby's doing, but you definitely cannot use it as a knock on Luka Doncic. As of last week, I got a couple of stats for you guys. 0.84 points per possession allowed in isolations. That's right up there with OG Anunoby, one of the best defenders in the league. He's also top 10 in steals, top 7 in charges drawn, 95th percentile in shots contested, and 87th percentile in rim contest. So when you say defense, what are you asking more of Luka when he's giving you 40 points on the other side of the ball? How many times has Luka Doncic scored 40 points this season? 15 times. How many times has Wemby done that? Only 3. When you're giving that much offensively, and then you also close that gap from what everybody was saying you were deficient in defensively, how can you not say he's the MVP?
Luka is a great defensive player, and he's taken a step, like you said, but his step is not to where Wemby is walking right now, because Victor, obviously, you said 3 blocks a game, is only averaging, I think it's 0.5 or 0.6 steals less than Luka. And so Luka is a great defender. I don't think he's the best defender on his team. That's up for argument. But without a doubt, Wemby is the best defensive player for his team and maybe in the Western Conference.
But one more thing, back to the offensive side of the ball, he said it's not just scoring. I would argue there's no player with a greater gravity in the NBA than Luka Doncic on a night-to-night basis. Every time Luka Doncic steps on the court, you have to account for him fully. There's nothing you can do to truly stop him. If he's not scoring, he's giving you 10 assists.
Yeah, I agree with that.
10 rebounds as well. And most of the time, he's still going to give you 35 points, even if it's a little bit inefficient. He's still going to give you that production. And like I said, he closed that gap defensively. So I just don't see where Wemby's making that case over Luka Doncic.
Him saying offense is not just points. I get it. I see where you're coming from. But you average 3.1 assists a game and 2.5 turnovers.
That's not
he can pass the ball pretty well, but he's not a super high producing player on offense outside of putting the ball in the hole. And as far as him scoring the ball, he only averages 24.5 points a game. He can't outscore. He can't score with the best of them. He can't score with the Lukas and the Shays of the world. And at the end of the day, that's how you win games. Putting the ball in the hole.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, Victor is good defensively. He's good offensively. But where it comes to be like you said, not an offensive a juggernaut like the most of these people, but as far as I'm concerned, most of the people are not the defensive juggernaut that he is, and that I think the argument he's trying to make is that he's multifaceted at such a young age that although he is the best player in the world, in my opinion, I probably don't think he's the most valuable to an organization like Luka is, who can do the assist and do the rebounds and just has that overall gravity. But the best player is Victor Wembanyama, because he's such a good player on both sides of the ball and he has such a high IQ at such a young age.
You cannot call yourself the best basketball player on God's green earth until you win a title. That is the separator. That is the separation. Him saying they beat the defending champs 3 out of 4 times in the regular season while they had their a few times while they had their full squad. Once when they didn't, that's legit. That's a legit argument for him to win MVP of the regular season. But him being the best basketball player in the world, you gotta do it up against the best, and you gotta do it in the playoffs when it's crunch time and everything is on the line. This season in the playoffs is where he's gonna be able to make his case for the best player in the world.
Absolutely. And same thing for Luka Doncic. You know, we saw him beat Shea in the playoffs. We saw him beat these guys in the playoffs. But like you said, he hasn't gotten to that next step. That's another thing I want to see from both Luka and Wemby this postseason.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I do agree with you that you have to prove yourself in the postseason. And Shea right now is very good, but I think Wemby's the best in the world right now. I think Luka's the most valuable, and I think Shea is second in both. And that's a credit to Shea because he's one of the most valuable and he's one of the best players. But in terms of just gravity, and he's gone against the best in the regular season, and I know the playoffs are a different type of beast, and the Spurs team is very young, so I'm just excited how that will play out because I think he has something to prove now.
Definitely has something to prove. Definitely has something to prove. And with him talking like this in this press conference, I mean, MVPs are won on the court. They're not won in the press room.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Ask Allen Iverson.
He knows all about it.
Well, I mean, who else do you guys like? A sleeper pick for MVP do you have? Not Luka, not Shea or Wemby. Let's see what you guys have.
I mean, I think it's a shame that Cade is probably going to be out of the out of the conversation because he has that he had the collapsed lung, and he's gonna miss the games. He's gonna miss that 65 game mark. I think that's a real shame. That he's not gonna be able to be in the race for it. So if Cade was able to somehow able to get into those games, he would probably fall within, I think he should fall within the top 3 of the MVP race.
He's at 61 right now. Games played, I believe there's 8 or so more games. So somehow, by some miracle, he would have to find a way to play 4 or 5 more games.
I mean, them getting to number 1 in the East holds weight.
But would he be ahead of Nikola Jokic? You see what Joker's doing this year.
Yeah.
Would he be
Okay.
ahead of Joker?
I don't know if
think we obviously discussed the big 3 in the MVP race, but the 4th, for me, is undoubtedly Jokic. Because that dude, the offensive production that he puts on a night-to-night basis, and especially this season, I'm impressed with what he's doing because the Denver Nuggets have not been a great team. They have not been fundamentally sound this year. They've taken a step back for sure, yet you're still seeing Nikola produce the same way no matter what.
It's year in and year out with Nikola Jokic. I mean, he's
not slowing down.
3 MVPs and a title. Obviously,
Starting to get that voter fatigue.
yeah, voter fatigue, like we saw. Maybe with the Joel Embiid MVP, should have that gone to Jokic? We don't know, but give me another sleeper you have, if you have one.
I mean, again, if another sleeper, like to call this guy a sleeper is insane. Jaylen Brown, the Celtics, number 1, number 2 in the East, 28, 7 and 5. He don't got no left hand, but he's still nice. So Jaylen Brown will probably be another pick for me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm impressed. I'm not a high on the Boston Celtics. I'm a Laker fan, as you guys both know.
That's right.
But I most definitely have been impressed with what Jaylen Brown has done this season. Without Tatum most of the year, nobody expected the Boston Celtics to even be a playoff contender, really. We expected them to probably be in the playoffs, but true contenders, absolutely not. But yet, Jaylen Brown took that next step, and he's launched them into that category.
And now that they have Jason Tatum back, they're probably going to come out of the East, yo.
Thank you to everyone who came on to today's show to talk some sports, and thank you, the viewer, for watching through the whole episode. I hope you guys enjoyed, and maybe enjoyed enough to follow us on our socials to see more. Our @ is thehuddle.official. Please follow. We need you to join the Huddle Nation. As always, I'm your host, Maya Perez, and I look forward to seeing you next week for another episode of The Huddle. See ya.